Okay, let's unpack this. If you run a fleet, you are, well, probably feeling squeezed right now. On one side, profit demands absolute efficiency, keeping costs way down. But on the other, governments everywhere are demanding you meet these really tight emission standards. That often costs money up front. It feels like a real bind. So this deep dive, it's your shortcut. We're going to show you how to turn that challenge into, believe it or not, an advantage. We've gone through the key source material, looked at what's changing, and pulled out 7 specific, practical money-saving strategies.
That's our goal here. We're focused on pulling out strategies that work. Things that save you money, yes, but also future-proof your business, making sure you can actually operate where you need to. We're talking about, avoiding those huge fines, making sure your trucks aren't suddenly banned from key areas.
And let's be clear right from the start. This is just smart business. Full stop. We're not just talking about vague sustainability goals for some report. We mean real, tangible things like cutting your fuel use by double digits. That's cash in your pocket now. And you're also cleaning up the air, which, let's face it, is good for everyone.
Okay, so before we get to the solutions, we need to understand the pressure. Why is this unavoidable? Well, emission standards are basically government rules. They limit pollutants like CO2, nitrogen oxides, and NOx. That's a big one for smog and those tiny particles. And the reason they're getting tougher is simple: public health and climate change. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just one country or region. We're seeing the US EPA, the EU, even developing nations tighten the screws. It's global. Compliance isn't really optional anymore. The penalties aren't just fines. Sometimes it means you literally can't operate in certain markets.
Right. And the changes you have to track are happening right now. It's not just theory. First, stricter limits. Tailpipe emissions for NOx, greenhouse gases, they're going down. Second, these low emission zones, or LEZs. Think city centers, London, Paris, more and more in the US, if your trucks are too polluting. Big fees. Or you're just banned. We saw sources mentioning fleets having to completely reroute, losing profitable city contracts. That hurts immediately.
It really does. And then third, mandatory reporting. You have to report your fleet's emissions now in many places. No more hiding inefficiency. And fourth, the big one, the push for zero-emission vehicles, ZEVs. Think electric trucks. Targets are often 2030, maybe even sooner. You need to plan for that now. Fleets that wait, they risk fines, lost business, and getting locked out of those dense, high-revenue delivery zones.
Okay, so the pressure's definitely real, high stakes. Let's pivot to strategy. Strategy 1, the absolute must-do first step: audit your fleet's emissions. Today, you can't manage what you don't measure, right? This isn't just basic GPS tracking. You need telematics, fleet management software tracking fuel burn, idle time, how drivers accelerate, everything. The aim is a detailed pollution profile for every single truck.
Exactly. That data is gold because it points you straight to the problems, which leads directly into strategy 2. Retire or retrofit the worst offenders. The sources called them smoky elephants, those old high-emission trucks. They're costing you money and polluting heavily. You've got 2 main paths. Replace them with cleaner models. That's the ideal long-term play. Or retrofit them. Retrofitting means adding tech like diesel particulate filters, DPFs, and selective catalytic reduction SCR systems. But here's the crucial bit, the nuance you need to grasp. These aren't just bolt-on fixes. They need serious maintenance. DPFs need regeneration cycles. SCR needs diesel exhaust fluid, DEF. If you skip that maintenance, you get huge repair bills, and worse, the system fails and your truck is polluting just as badly again. So it's a real technical commitment.
Okay, I hear that, but let's be realistic for a second. What about the smaller operators? Maybe they have a dozen older trucks, replacing them all. Or complex retrofits across the board. The upfront cost seems massive. For them, isn't the real issue less what to do and more about finding...
That's a very fair point. And that's why the transition has to be strategic. Which brings us nicely to strategies 3 and 4, focusing on fuels. Strategy 3 is invest in alternative fuels. Changing the fuel source can give you immediate emission cuts. But it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. For instance, EVs, electric vehicles, zero tailpipe emissions, great for city routes, shorter runs, hydrogen fuel cells. They look promising for long hauls. Only emit water vapor. Then you've got things like compressed natural gas, CNG, burns cleaner than diesel, though sometimes needs special fueling stations.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think, especially with biofuels. You hear about renewable diesel, sometimes called HEO, and standard biodiesel. Both cut pollution, But that renewable diesel, the HVO, it's basically chemically the same as regular diesel, which means, it can often just drop right into existing engines, existing tanks, no big modifications needed. That makes it a really powerful bridge solution for fleets needing quick compliance wins without overhauling everything.
That distinction is absolutely critical, and it ties perfectly into Strategy 4, which tackles your point about upfront costs. Electrify strategically. Don't think you need to convert your entire fleet and depot overnight. That's often unrealistic. Start small. Look at vehicles with predictable routes, maybe yard spotters or trucks that stay close to home base. Transition those first. And leverage government grants. There's often significant money available to help in the vehicle cost. But the biggest hurdle, often overlooked, is the charging infrastructure. Plan that way ahead. Think about what kind of charging you need. Basic level 2 is slow. Do you need DC fast charging? And crucially, talk to your local utility company early, like years in advance. Getting the grid upgraded to handle a depot full of EVs can take 18 months, maybe even 36 months, waiting until the trucks show up. That's a recipe for disaster.
Wow, yeah, that utility lead time, that's a game changer for planning. Really practical advice. Okay, let's shift to the next set of strategies. Number 5. This one feels like low-hanging fruit, maybe. Train drivers for eco-driving. That sounds like common sense, but is it really effective?
Oh, absolutely. The source material really backs this up, focusing on things like smooth acceleration, gentle braking using the vehicle's momentum, cutting down idle time, which just wastes fuel, and using gears smartly. It all adds up.
Adds up how much? I remember seeing a specific figure. Didn't one source say up to 15% fuel savings? 15%. Just from changing driving habits. Think about that ROI. Those savings could pay for the training program itself in what, 6 months, maybe less? That changes the whole calculation. Although I imagine getting veteran drivers on board might be tricky. They might think they already know best.
That's often true, which is why the data is key. You need to show them their own numbers from the telematics, make it concrete. And that perfectly leads into Strategy 6. Leverage technology and data beyond just tracking. You need smart systems. Systems that analyze and even predict, use route optimization software that considers efficiency, not just distance, avoiding traffic jams where you just sit and idle. But the real kicker is predictive maintenance. Real-time monitoring can flag issues early, like a failing injector or a turbo problem, these small mechanical issues. They can actually cause huge spikes in emissions. Catching them early saves on breakdowns, sure, but it also keeps your emission controls working properly, keeps those compliance dashboards green.
Okay, makes sense. Data drives better maintenance, which helps compliance. And the final one, Strategy 7. Stay ahead of policy changes. This feels crucial, but maybe a bit vague. How do you actually do that? And given how fast rules change, is there a real risk you invest heavily in, say, CNG technology today, and then 2 years later, new rules make it obsolete?
That risk is absolutely real. Regulations definitely push technology forward, sometimes faster than expected. So you need constant vigilance. Read industry news, attend webinars, get involved with fleet associations. You have to anticipate what's coming next. Which cities are planning ZEV-only zones after 2028, for example? Knowing that protects your investments. Pouring money into tech with a short regulatory shelf life, that's just as bad as waiting too long. You need to align your truck buying cycle with the policy roadmap.
What's fascinating here is how this whole conversation circles back to cost. We have to tackle that perception head on. Compliance is just too expensive.
We really do. Look, nobody's denying that buying new ZEVs or doing major retrofits requires significant upfront capital. Yes. But ignoring these huge shifts, that costs way more in the long run. Think about it. Crippling fines, wasted fuel from inefficient trucks, higher repair costs on failing systems. And maybe the biggest cost, getting shut out of contracts because your clients demand greener transport partners.
Yeah.
That's happening more and more. When you look at the total cost of ownership factoring in lower fuel for EVs, less maintenance, guaranteed market access suddenly going green looks less like an expense and more like a strategic investment, a necessary one.
So what does this all mean for the operator listening right now? It means every dollar spent on smart compliance should actually lower your other operating costs. The return isn't just environmental brownie points, it's financial. Lower fuel bills, tax breaks potentially, fewer breakdowns because you're using data smartly. And yeah, building that customer trust, that brand reputation, that can open doors to better contracts. So the path forward, pulling it all together from the sources, seems clear. 7 steps. 1. Know your emissions, truck by truck. 2. Deal with those old smoky elephants replace or retrofit. 3. Choose cleaner fuel strategically. 4. Start electrifying the routes that make sense, planning infrastructure way ahead. 5. Train your drivers for that 15% fuel saving. 6. Use tech and data not just to track, but to optimize and predict. And 7, keep your eyes glued to policy changes. Future-proof your investments.
Precisely. And the journey has to start now, with that first smart step. Don't get caught waiting until, say, 2029, when those 2030 ZEV goals are breathing down your neck. Think about how fast those looming targets are going to affect the value of your current diesel trucks, how they'll change buying decisions very soon. Preparing today is genuinely the only way to avoid becoming obsolete tomorrow. And just on a practical note, right now, go calculate what that 15% O-driving saving would mean across your whole fleet's annual fuel bill. That's a number you can probably act on this week.